Hello and welcome to Dark Souls Lore Q&A, lucky number 7. Last time we spoke about Haid and the Haid Knights, and today we'll be taking a look at another elite group of knights, the Syan Knights. Whilst Haid Knights were named after the land they served, the Syan Knights were named after a single man, Syan. And something interesting I have to point out. How would you pronounce that? Because previously I had been saying Syan, like the colour cyan. But whilst writing the script for this video, I thought I'd go and look it up out of curiosity, and well, here's what I found. For starters, some people insist that the name is pronounced anywhere from Sham to Shan and all sorts of varieties. That wasn't very helpful, so instead I went and looked up the Japanese spelling, which I thought might provide some answers. And it kind of did. Apparently in the Japanese version of Dark Souls 2, the Syan Knights are referred to as the Syan Knights. Z-A-I-N. It looks like the spelling was changed to S-Y-A-N during localization. As for the pronunciation, that's still anyone's guess. For the sake of simplicity, I will keep calling them Syan Knights. In semi-related news, you remember the Falconer set? The original name of that is the Goshawk set. Is there much of a difference between Goshawk and Falcons? Maybe not the greatest, but I found that interesting, and there are a number of other changes, but I found those two in particular quite interesting. Anyway, let's get back to Syan. Who was Sir Syan? Sir Syan was widely known as the kingdom's most loyal knight, and when the giants invaded, he volunteered to lead the advance party, but he was slaughtered most dishonourably. And that is about all we know. Vendrick kept a number of capable knights, Sir Syan, Sir Velstadt, and Sir Raime. There's also the unnamed Throne Defender and Throne Watcher, who were originally intended to be fought as a trio along with Velstadt. And Velstadt and Syan's armours share some similarities thematically and in colour. Whilst Raime fought with sword and Velstadt with mace, Syan fought with a halberd spear and presumably a shield, although his personal shield was not completed before he met his end, the Great Shield of Glory. Great Shield of the King's Loyal Knight Syan. The king commissioned this Great Shield specifically for his loyal knight, but Syan met his demise before its completion. Strangely enough, due to some sort of error or mishap prior to the game's launch, the Phoenix Palmer, the shield that yours truly designed, held the description of the Great Shield of Glory. Most likely this was just a mistake somewhere, someone mixed up something, as the Phoenix Palmer is certainly not a great shield, but still, I like to think that perhaps in some ways, Syan was a Phoenix Knight. Although he didn't do much rising from the ashes, the only way his legacy lived on was through the Syan Knights, outfitted in replica armour and weapons of the loyal knight. And yet, these knights soon fell to madness after donning the gear. To me, that implies some sort of curse. If they were donning the actual armour of Syan, it would make more sense. But as it is, why would Syan curse his own armour? Would it imply the loyal knight now holds some resentment towards Vendrick? Or is it something as simple as regret? Like when a ghost remains because they have duties unfulfilled. Shame and regret for failing his lord, dying in a manner so dishonourable. But then, we know that the giants don't exactly fight with honour, nor are they enemies with which any knight can truly hope to compete. How would Raime and Velstadt have fared if they fought the giants? I mean, Velstadt after all is practically a giant himself, he's a big guy. And could Syan's death have any relation to the disagreement, the falling out between Raime and Velstadt that caused them to clash? And is there anything to note about the Syan Knights themselves? Well, we primarily find them in and around Drangleic Castle, but as a scholar of the First Sin, we also find them guarding various checkpoints throughout the game, suggesting that the Syan Knights were a kind of honour guard, you might say, and certainly high-ranking amongst the Drangleic forces. Unlike the royal swordsmen who wear armour that has been stripped down purely for combat, the Syan Knights have ornamentation. Their armour is flashy, which naturally leads me to assume there are far less of them. Perhaps they even operate like sergeants or commanders. It does make you wonder though, about a chain of command, the hierarchy. At the bottom we obviously have the infantry, then we have perhaps the royal soldiers as their sergeants, and above them we presumably have the royal swordsman. King Vendrick supplied his bravest men with the best armour available to face the great giants, but very few returned alive. Above those, we could have the Syan Knights, although as mentioned, they seem to be less frontline fighters and more guards, as we generally find them guarding doors and such. Likewise with the Primal Knights, the Mastodon Knights, who are the rarest of all. The king restored a forbidden, long-lost art to create these inhuman abominations, and for the most part their duty seems in line with the Syan Knights, guarding Drangleic Castle. Then above those we obviously have Syan, Raime and Velstadt. Of course, Velstadt seems to have been the commander of the Stone Soldiers. All these mighty warriors, and yet they could do very little to stop the giants. Makes you wonder, doesn't it? Just how much regret could Vendrick possibly feel, knowing what he has done, at the behest of Nishandra? And what do you think of Sir Syan and his Mad Knights? Let me know in the comments, and of course, if you have any questions or ideas for future Q&A videos, please do share them.